Good morning, and I'd like to start by expressing my most sincere thanks to our good friends and colleagues at the Global Environmental Institute for organising today's event, and greetings also to all speakers and participants, and in particular I would like to recognise Dr. Meng, the Director General of International Cooperation with the NFGA in China. Now, I'm joining you today as the Chair of the Global Initiative to End Wildlife Crime. It's a two-year-old initiative that is hosted by the ADM Capital Foundation in Hong Kong, China, SAR. And we are guided in our work by a steering group and 28 supporting international champions coming from across every continent and sector. And GEI was a founding member of our steering group. Now, our initiative has two objectives, namely to advance the discussion on a possible new international legal instrument on preventing and combating wildlife trafficking, and to promote a One Health approach to wildlife trade and markets. And today's discussion is about our first and primary objective. Our initiative was launched back in June 2020, and our current work plan is focused on supporting Angola, Kenya, and Peru in advancing a resolution they co-sponsored to the UN Commission on Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice in May of this year. This important resolution, titled Strengthening the International Legal Framework for International Cooperation to Prevent and Combat Illicit Trafficking in Wildlife, was adopted by consensus by the UN Crime Commission and co-sponsored by another 13 states. Now, prior to submitting this resolution, the President of Angola had called for a new global agreement to prevent and combat wildlife crime, taking the form of an additional protocol under the UN Convention Against Transnational Organised Crime, known as the UNCTOC. In doing so, His Excellency joined the call made by the President of Gabon and the President of Costa Rica for a new agreement in May of last year, and in February of this year, the President of Malawi also joined this call. Now, there are many things that need to happen at all levels if we hope to seriously tackle wildlife trafficking. This includes addressing both demand and supply, working across source, transit and destination countries, building the capacity of the criminal justice system in each country, and having in place sound national and international laws. And my focus today is on the need for enhanced international cooperation and the importance of strengthening the international legal framework that facilitates such cooperation. I'm going to briefly explore the case for a new international legal agreement on tackling wildlife trafficking, an agreement taking the form of an additional protocol under the UNCTOC, as has been called for by the presidents of Angola, Costa Rica, Gabon and Malawi. An additional protocol is also one of the options the UN Crime Commission has invited states to consider. Now, when I'm talking of wildlife, I'm including all wild fauna and flora, including all fish and tree species, not just the limited number of species listed under CITES, which is only about 0.5% of our world's 8 million species. However, what species would ultimately be included in a protocol would be a matter for states to determine, and there are a number of options in this regard. All right, why do we need to scale up our international efforts? Well, reports from the IPBES, UNEP, UNODC, the World Bank, amongst others, graphically describe the severe environmental consequences of wildlife crime for our climate, ecosystems, wild animals and plants, as well as for people's livelihoods and public and animal health. And if we add the cost of the impacts on ecosystems, then the World Bank estimates the cost of these crimes at a staggering $1 to $2 trillion each year. Now, successfully tackling these crimes demands high levels of cooperation at all levels. And having served as CITES Secretary General for 8 years, from 2010 to 2018, I've seen for myself the good progress that has been made through heightened international cooperation and national action. And these endeavours have resulted in greater attention and resources being dedicated to the issue, and this is encouraging. But it's equally clear that these gains are both insufficient and fragile. And notwithstanding these efforts, we're still nowhere near ending wildlife trafficking. Just look at the plight of the pangolin, which despite being given CITES' highest level of protection, is being poached and trafficked at record levels. Now, CITES is often referred to as providing some form of legal framework. I know this convention extremely well. It's an important convention. I love it, but it is limited in scope. It was never designed to deal with wildlife crime. CITES is a 50-year-old trade-related convention, not a crime-related convention. CITES sets international rules for wildlife trade, rules that organized criminals seek to avoid. But CITES should focus its efforts on supporting parties better regulate legal, sustainable trade, where much more work is needed, and leave it to the enforcement-related organizations to take the lead in tackling wildlife trafficking. Besides, we should be addressing all species that are being trafficked, noting that the UN World Wildlife Crime Report of 2020 says that while 6,000 CITES-listed species are represented in illegal trade, millions of species that are not listed by CITES may be illegally harvested and traded, especially timber and fish. We should intervene early to stop a species from becoming endangered, rather than wait until the situation deteriorates. And this will also help ensure that the species can continue to be utilised legally and sustainably. Now, there are many disparate non-binding resolutions and initiatives in this area, but there is no global centre of gravity for advancing cooperative efforts or for reviewing the progress made. The UNODC, the UN conventions it hosts, the UN Crime Commission, and the UN Vienna Duty Station should lead on a global, cooperative, coordinated effort, including in reviewing our collective process. Now, the content of a protocol is something that states would determine through an intergovernmental negotiating process. A protocol would, however, be the first global legally binding instrument to include an agreed definition on wildlife trafficking. And this would facilitate a convergence in national approaches, thereby enhancing international cooperation. It would also include specific obligations on how states will work together to combat and prevent these serious crimes, and we've set out some options that states may choose to consider, which are available online. Importantly, a protocol could allow for states to provide for a broad range of penalty options for wildlife trafficking, based on the value of the contraband and the level of harm caused, including community service orders, restitution, paying fines and damages, as well as imprisonment. Now, I would like to conclude by acknowledging the leadership of the presidents of Angola, Costa Rica, Gabon, and Malawi, who have made a powerful, united call for a new protocol, as well as Angola, Kenya, and Peru, who submitted and co-sponsored the resolution to the UN Crime Commission. Support for an additional protocol under the UNCTOC has also been expressed and recently reaffirmed by the European Commission in the EU strategy to tackle organised crime and in its action plan to end wildlife trafficking, including the recently released revised version. Colleagues, an additional protocol would benefit our global biodiversity, climate, health and security, along with Indigenous peoples, local communities and national governments. And in doing so, it would assist states in delivering on the post-2020 global biodiversity framework. Thank you.